To understand the sheer, seismic weight of September 6, 1976, you cannot simply start with the telethon. You have to start with the silence. You have to understand that for an entire generation of Americans, Martin and Lewis was not just an act, it was a fundamental law of physics. They were the two halves of the comic atom. Dean was the earth, solid, smooth, unshakable. Jerry was the lightning, manic, destructive, brilliant. When they were together, they didn't just tell jokes, they generated an energy that bordered on hysteria. But on July 25, 1956, at the Copa Room in New York, the atom split. The breakup wasn't a drift, it was an amputation. It was violent, it was public, and it was absolute. When Dean Martin walked off that stage, he didn't just leave a partner, he cut off a limb. The animosity that followed was biblical. They didn't speak. They didn't acknowledge each other's existence. In the geography of Hollywood, they became two warring nation-states separated by a wall of ice. For 20 years, the silence grew. It hardened. Mutual friends learned the rules quickly: you do not mention Jerry to Dean. You do not mention Dean to Jerry. If you were at a party and Dean walked in, Jerry walked out. It was the Cold War of comedy, and nobody, not even the biggest producers in the world, thought it would ever end. They were destined to die as strangers who once shared a soul. Fast forward 2 decades. 1976, Jerry Lewis is 50 years old, but he looks older. He is the undisputed king of comedy, the auteur, the genius behind The Nutty Professor. But he is also a man consuming himself. He runs the Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA, telethon every Labor Day weekend like a military campaign. Picture the scene. The Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas. The air conditioning is fighting a losing battle against the heat of television lights and thousands of bodies. The telethon is a 21-hour endurance test. Jerry is the ringmaster, the host, the beggar-in-chief. He stays awake for the entire duration. He sings, he dances, he cries, he pleads for money. By the 20th hour, he is hallucinating from exhaustion. He is fueled by adrenaline, Percodan, for his back pain, and sheer, terrifying ego. On this particular weekend, Jerry is more on edge than usual. The numbers are good, the tote board is ticking up, but there is a hollowness in his eyes. He is surrounded by people, assistants, producers, stars, but he is profoundly alone. He is a man shouting into a microphone, trying to fill a void that has been empty since 1956. He misses the anchor. He misses the man who used to stand next to him and make the chaos feel safe. But he would rather die than admit it. Across town, or perhaps across the psychological universe, sits Dean Martin. At 59, Dean has settled into the role of the lazy king. He is the star of the Dean Martin Celebrity Roasts, the highest-paid performer in Las Vegas, and a man who has turned detachment into an art form. Dean doesn't do drama. He doesn't do heavy. He plays golf. He drinks his apple juice, disguised as scotch. He watches westerns. He has built a fortress of cool around himself that nothing can penetrate, not critics, not ex-wives, and certainly not memories of a frantic kid named Jerry. Dean has spent 20 years proving he didn't need Jerry. And he succeeded. He became a better singer, a better actor, a bigger star. But the phantom limb is still there. When he performs alone on stage, there is a space to his left, a vacuum where the interruption used to come. He fills it with cigarette smoke and silence. He has no intention of going to the telethon. He hates telethons. He hates the fake sentimentality, the begging, the long hours. He plans to spend Labor Day exactly how he spends every other day, alone, comfortable, and unbothered. Enter the third player. The chairman of the board. Frank Sinatra. Frank occupied a unique space in this tragedy. He was best friends with Dean. He was friends with Jerry. He was the only man in the world who had the clearance to walk between the two camps without getting shot. And Frank Sinatra hated disorder. To Frank, the feud between Dean and Jerry was an affront to the natural order of things. It was messy. It was un-Italian. Family, and to Frank, the Rat Pack was family, doesn't stop talking for 20 years. Family fights, throws chairs, hugs, and moves on. The silence offended Frank's sense of loyalty. But there was something else. Frank loved power. He loved being the deus ex machina, the god in the machine who descends from the heavens to fix what mortals cannot. He decided, in the late summer of 1976, that he would be the one to end the war. Not because they asked him to, but because he could. He hatched a plan. It was a Black Ops mission. He couldn't tell Jerry, Jerry would panic and refuse. He couldn't tell Dean the truth, Dean would refuse and go play golf. He had to manipulate the situation with the precision of a diamond cutter. The negotiation with Dean Martin was not a conversation, it was a hostage situation. Frank called Dean. "Dino, I'm doing the telethon tonight. I want you to come with me." Dean laughed. "You're funny, Frank. I'd rather get a root canal without Novocaine. I'm watching Gunsmoke. I'm not asking, Dino. I'm telling you. It's time." "Time for what? To see the kid?" "No. We did that. It's over. It's been 20 years. Look, you don't have to do anything. Just come down, say hello, wave at the people, and leave. Do it for me." Dean was silent. He took a drag of his cigarette. He knew Frank. He knew that when Frank used that tone, the tone that implied, "I am the chairman and you are my soldier," you didn't say no. Not if you wanted peace. "Fine," Dean sighed. "But I'm not singing. And I'm not staying. Just put on a tux, Dino. I'll pick you up." Frank hung up. He smiled. Step 1 was complete. But getting Dean to the building was the easy part. Keeping it a secret from Jerry Lewis, the most controlling micromanager in show business history, was the impossible part. The Sahara Hotel was in lockdown. Security was tight. The backstage area was a hive of producers with headsets, frantically counting seconds. Frank Sinatra's arrival was treated like a presidential visit. But nobody looked at the second car. Nobody looked at the man in the back seat, slumped low, smoking a Kent cigarette. Frank smuggled Dean Martin into the hotel through the kitchen service entrance. It was a scene out of a spy movie. The king of cool, sneaking past dishwashers and line cooks, avoiding the eyes of stagehands. Frank hid him in a dressing room far away from the main stage. "Stay here," Frank ordered. "Don't open the door. Don't let anyone see you." Dean sat on a folding chair in the small, windowless room. He poured himself a drink. He checked his watch. He felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't fear, Dean Martin didn't do fear, but it was a vibration. A frequency he hadn't felt since 1956. He was in the same building as him. He could hear Jerry's voice coming through the monitor in the hallway. That shrill, manic, desperate voice. It sounded older. It sounded tired. Dean closed his eyes. For a second, he wasn't the legend, he was just the crooner from Steubenville, wondering if the comic was going to make him laugh or break his heart. On stage, Jerry Lewis was falling apart. It was nearly midnight. He had been broadcasting for almost 20 hours. His back was screaming in agony. His voice was raw. He was sweating through his tuxedo. He was running on pure emotional fumes. He introduced Frank Sinatra with the reverence of a disciple. "Ladies and gentlemen, Francis Albert Sinatra." The crowd cheered. It was a good get for the telethon. Frank walked out, looking tanned and dangerous in his tuxedo. He hugged Jerry. Jerry looked relieved. Here was a friend. Here was someone who could carry the load for 10 minutes while Jerry caught his breath. Frank took the microphone. He looked at Jerry. He saw the exhaustion in the man's face. He saw the ghost of the partnership haunting his eyes. Frank smiled. It was the smile of a man holding a royal flush. You know, Jerry, Frank said, playing to the crowd. I've got a friend who loves what you do. And he wanted to come down and say hello. Jerry nodded, his brain moving slowly through the fog of fatigue. A friend? That's nice, Frank. Who is it? Frank turned toward the curtain. The orchestra conductor, who had been briefed only seconds earlier, raised his baton. Frank yelled, "Send him out." The curtain parted. For a split second, the audience didn't react. They saw a man in a tuxedo. They saw the dark hair, the red pocket square, the cigarette. And then, the collective brain of the audience processed the image. It was him. The sound that erupted in the Sahara showroom was not human. It wasn't applause. It was a shockwave. It was the sound of 3,000 people gasping, screaming, and crying at the same exact moment. It was a physical force that hit the stage. Jerry Lewis was looking at Frank. He didn't see Dean yet. He heard the noise and looked confused. He turned his head slowly. And then he froze. Time stopped. Literally. For Jerry Lewis, the spinning world ground to a halt. The camera zoomed in on his face. It was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. His mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes widened. He looked like a child who had just been told that Santa Claus was real. Dean Martin was walking towards him. He wasn't running. He wasn't rushing. He was strolling. That famous, liquid walk. One hand in his pocket, the other holding the cigarette. He was smiling that half smile, the one that said, "Isn't this all ridiculous?" He looked incredible. Tanned, fit, relaxed. He looked like the sun walking into a dark room. Jerry stood rooted to the spot. He was trembling. You could see it on the tape. His hands were shaking. He didn't know what to do. The script was gone. The control was gone. He was naked in front of 100 million people. Frank stood back, watching his masterpiece unfold. He looked like a proud father. Dean reached center stage. He stopped a few feet from Jerry. The two men, the two halves of the atom, stood face to face for the first time in 7,346 days. The noise in the room was deafening. A standing ovation that wouldn't end. They were cheering for the reunion, yes, but they were cheering for something deeper. They were cheering for the possibility that broken things can be fixed. That silence doesn't have to be forever. Dean waited. He let the applause wash over them. He looked at Jerry, really looked at him. He saw the gray hair, the sweat, the pain lines. He saw the brother he had loved and hated with equal violence. And then, Dean Martin leaned in. The microphone caught the first words spoken between them in 20 years. The noise was subsiding, settling into a hum of expectant energy. Dean and Jerry were inches apart. Jerry was weeping, openly, shamelessly. His face was crumpled, a map of 20 years of regret. Dean looked at him. He saw the tears. He saw the vulnerability. And Dean Martin, the man who detested heavy moments, knew he had to puncture the tension before it suffocated them both. He didn't say, "I missed you." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He took the cigarette from his mouth, flicked an imaginary ash onto the immaculate stage floor, looked Jerry up and down with that croupier's deadpan stare, and delivered the line that would become legend. "So, you working?" The timing was atomic. It was the perfect callback to their early days, the inside joke of two hustlers trying to survive. The audience exploded. It wasn't just laughter, it was relief. The dam broke. Jerry doubled over, laughing through his tears. He grabbed Dean. He held on to him like a drowning man clutching a life raft. Dean allowed the hug. He patted Jerry's cheek, a gesture so familiar, so paternal, that it instantly transported everyone back to 1952. He kissed him. It was awkward, it was stiff, but it was there. The ice wall had been breached. Frank Sinatra stepped in, beaming, playing the ringmaster. "I think it's about time, don't you?" he roared to the crowd. For the next few minutes, the script was thrown out the window. It was pure improv. It was jazz. Jerry was trying to regain his composure, wiping his eyes. Dean was playing the drunk, swaying slightly, using the persona as a shield against the raw emotion of the moment. "I don't know what to say," Jerry stammered, his voice trembling. "Don't say nothing," Dean replied smoothly. "Just look at me." They stood at the podium. Frank was hovering, making sure the energy stayed up. But then, the old magic, the Martin and Lewis chaos factor, kicked in. Dean leaned his elbow on the podium. There was a glass of water sitting there for Jerry. With a movement that was either clumsiness or the most brilliant piece of physical comedy ever executed, Dean's elbow clipped the glass. Smash! The glass hit the floor and shattered. Water splashed everywhere. In 1976, on live television, this was a disaster. But for Dean and Jerry, it was oxygen. Jerry jumped back, making a face of exaggerated horror. Dean looked at the mess, looked at Jerry, and shrugged with divine indifference. "I didn't do it." The audience roared. For 10 glorious seconds, they weren't two aging men with a complicated history. They were the boys again. The handsome man and the monkey. Destroying the set, breaking the rules, finding the funny in the destruction. Frank laughed so hard he had to hold on to the microphone stand. It was the only moment of the night where the tension truly vanished, replaced by the muscle memory of their genius. But Dean Martin was a man of limits. He had done what Frank asked. He had shown up. He had hugged the kid. He had made the joke. And now, his internal clock was ticking. He could feel the heavy coming back. He could feel Jerry wanting to dive deep, to talk about feelings, to make speeches. Dean checked out. You could see it in his eyes. The curtain came down behind his pupils. "I gotta go, Pally," he said to Frank, loud enough for the mic to catch. "My show's on." He didn't mean a TV show. He meant his life. He meant his solitude. Jerry looked panicked. "You're leaving?" "I gotta go," Dean repeated. He patted Jerry's face one last time. "You doing good, kid. Keep it up." And then, he turned. He walked off the stage the same way he walked on, slow, cool, unbothered. He didn't look back. He didn't wave. He walked into the wings, took a sip of a real drink that his assistant handed him, and got into the waiting car. "Get me to the airport," he told the driver. He was in the building for less than 15 minutes. He changed television history, healed a national wound, and vanished into the night before the credits rolled. The world thought this was the new beginning. The press went wild. Martin and Lewis reunited. They expected a tour. A movie. A new show. Jerry Lewis certainly hoped for it. He went home that night believing that he had his brother back. He was wrong. The next day, Jerry called Dean's number. It rang and rang. He sent letters. They went unanswered. He sent invites. They were politely declined. The silence returned. It wasn't the angry silence of 1956, it was a quiet, indifferent silence. Dean had closed the book. The telethon was just a postscript he wrote to make Frank happy. He didn't want to reopen the wound. He didn't want to revisit the past. He was content in his solitude. For 19 years, they drifted apart again. Jerry continued to work maniacally. Dean continued to fade, especially after the death of his son, Dino Jr., in 1987. Dean became a ghost in his own life, sitting in restaurants alone, watching westerns, waiting for the end. Jerry never stopped loving him. He spoke about Dean in interviews with a reverence that bordered on worship. He waited. He hoped. The true ending of the story didn't happen on a stage in Las Vegas. It happened in a dark bedroom in Beverly Hills. December 25, 1995. Christmas Day. Dean Martin was dying. Emphysema had ravaged his lungs. He was frail, weak, slipping in and out of consciousness. The family was there. The lights were low. The phone rang. Someone picked it up. They whispered to Dean. "It's Jerry." Dean opened his eyes. He nodded. They put the phone to his ear. Jerry Lewis was on the other end. He didn't make a joke. He didn't do a bit. He spoke from the heart. He told Dean that he loved him. He told him that he was the greatest partner a man could ever have. He thanked him for the years, for the laughs, for the magic. Dean listened. His breath was shallow. He couldn't say much. But he gathered the last of his strength. "I know, he whispered. His voice was a rasp, but the warmth was there. "I love you too." That was it. The war was over. The silence was broken, not for an audience, not for Frank Sinatra, but for them. Dean Martin died a few hours later. The king of cool left the building. When the news broke, Jerry Lewis was devastated. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't go on TV. He stayed home. Years later, Jerry revealed that he kept a picture of Dean in his office. He talked to it. He forgave him for the silence. He understood, finally, that Dean wasn't trying to hurt him. Dean was just trying to survive being Dean Martin. The 1976 telethon remains the most electric moment in live television history. Not because of what was said, but because of what was felt. It was the night the masks slipped. For 10 minutes, we saw two men who loved each other desperately, struggling to bridge the gap of ego and time. Dean Martin taught us that it's never too late to show up. Jerry Lewis taught us that it's never too late to forgive. And Frank Sinatra taught us that sometimes, you just have to grab your friends by the neck and force them to love each other. If you listen closely to the tape of that night, right before Dean walks off, you can hear a faint sound. It's the sound of glass crunching under their feet. The broken shards of their past. They left it there, on the stage, and walked separate ways home. But for one night, they walked together.